So now we will consider different shapes of the PCC, and we will talk about price elasticity of demand. So that was 1A. So please draw the diagrams. Consider the horizontal PCC in 1B, positively sloped PCC in figure 1C, and vertical PCC in 1D. In case of 1A, we did the negatively sloped PCC. So in case of 1B, we are considering the PCC, which is horizontal in nature. And we will consider the same idea, DE by DP1, change in expenditure, DE1, I think. I used the notation E1. Yes. So when the PCC is horizontal, we are finding the expenditure on X1 that is not changing, it is remaining fixed. So DE1 by DP1 is equal to 0. So X1 into 1 minus E1 is equal to 0. X1 is positive, so 1 minus E1 is equal to 0. And from there, we are getting E1 to be equal to 1. So own price elasticity of demand is unitary here. Unitary elastic demand for X1. In case of second diagram, PCC is positively sloped. And demand for X1 is, as P1 is falling, demand for X1 is also falling. So DE1 by DP1 is greater than 0. Okay, everybody could complete up to 1C and getting inelastic demand for X1.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And finally, consider a vertical PCC. So in 1C, it is positively sloped, and in 1D, when it is vertical, anyone, how we will solve this? Last case.
Ma'am, here the consumption of x1 is a constant. So if we take x1 equal to c, then the expenditure E will be P1 into a constant. And then E by d P1 would be only equals to the constant. And in that case, x1 would be equal to x1 into 1 minus E. So then 1 minus E will be equal to 1, and so E will be equal to 0. Therefore, it is perfectly invest.
Yes. Others, you could understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody could understand, or he will do it for you?
Ma'am, could you show it?
Okay, so who are you?
Ma'am, Pema.
Huh?
Ma'am, Pema Doje.
The girl who told me?
Ma'am, me Borini.
Bornini, yes. Bornini, could you present the workout? Will it be possible?
Ma'am, I don't know how to present.
Okay. So please tell me what I'll do.
Ma'am, the consumption of
Just,
X1 here
just
is
a
a
minute.
constant.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Consider. Yeah, tell me what I'll write.
Ma'am, the consumption of X1 will be a constant here. So expenditure on X1, we can write it as E1.
Consumption of X1 is a constant.
So the expenditure on X1 is equals to E equal to P1 into X1.
Yes.
Then dE by dP1, that will be equals to X1 because X1 is a constant. And also we have dE1 by dP1 equal to X1 into 1 minus E. So that will be equal to P1. x1 into 1 minus e. So from these two equations, combining these two equations, we have 1 minus e into x1 equals to x1. So 1 minus e1 equal to 1. This implies e1 is equal to 0.
Very good.
So the demand for x1 is perfectly inelastic.
Yes. Now everybody got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good, Bornini. So I think everybody could complete this. This is another one. This kind of backward bending thing. This is close to 1C. However, here we are considering this backward bending idea. And here, if you drop the perpendiculars, we are finding that as price of x1 is falling, consumption of x1 is also falling.
And what is the interpretation of this case, ma'am? Like I can.
Positive elasticity of demand for x1.
Acha, acha.
Only
Okay.
positive elasticities of demand for x1. So finally, we can consider a diagram like 1E. So finally, when PCC X1 is negatively sloped, but backward bending, as in figure 1E, finally, when PCC X1 is negatively sloped, but backward bending, as in figure 1E, it means that consumption of X1 goes down, consumption of X1 goes down, and consumption of X2 goes up, consumption of X2 goes up with the fall in,
Ma'am, with the
fall reduction, with the fall in price of X1 with the fall in P1 or price of X1. In this case, the own price elasticity of demand for X1, in this case, the own price elasticity of demand for X1 is positive in sign and the demand curve for X1 in the price quantity plane and the demand curve for X1 in the price quantity plane is positively sloped. So this is more or less the possible cases with ICC and PCC, their relations with income elasticities, price elasticities, etc. Now I'll draw the ICC and PCC for the Hicks-Slutsky kind of thing. So for the Hicks-Slutsky diagram too, if you like, you can draw the ICC, PCC, etc. How that? I'm showing it using this diagram. So AB is our initial budget line, and we consider a reduction in price of X1. So the new budget line is AB prime. We draw a hypothetical budget line HH prime so that if consumer like can consume along the initial indifference curve IC1. So both AB and HH prime are touching IC1 at different points. AB is touching IC1 at P, whereas HH1 is touching IC1 at Q. Okay. So this point of tangency is Q, whereas this point of tangency is P. And finally, the actual budget line is AB prime after the reduction in price of X1, and it is touching the indifference curve IC2 at point R. So now if I compare the budget line AB and AB prime, the movement from P to R we are getting. On the budget line P, we got the equilibrium at P, and on the budget line AB prime, we are getting the equilibrium at R. And these two equilibria have been generated because of change in price. So if I join this point of tangency with this point of tangency using a locus starting from A, that is a PCC. So starting from A, if I consider a locus passing through P and R, that is a PCC. On the other hand, if we compare HH prime and AB prime, the two budget lines are parallel to each other. So MRS or P1 by P2, these remain constant across the two budget lines. And we are getting these two different budget lines because of difference in income. OH is lesser compared to OA. Actually, we are cutting down income in such a way so that the consumer can consume along the initial indifference curve. However, HH prime and AB prime are the parallel lines indicating same relative prices. However, income levels are different. So HH prime has equilibrium at Q. It is touching IC1 at Q, and AB prime is touching IC2 at R. So if I join Q and R with origin, we are getting ICC. Okay. So we can draw ICC and PCC for the Hicks and the Slutsky models too. If you want to draw PCC, remember you have to connect the points which have been generated because of change in price. On the other hand, if you want to draw the ICC, you need to connect the points which have been generated because of change in income. Q and R have been generated because of change in income. So this will give us ICC, whereas P and R have been generated because of change in price, relative price. So if I join these 2 points, we will get the price consumption curve. So are you getting this, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody is getting this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Do the same for the Slutsky. I'm not showing it in the class, so please do it for Slutsky, and you can do it for normal goods, inferior goods, specifically for Giffen goods, you know. So for all the cases, you can do it. All cases we discussed earlier, for these you can do it. So this you need to practice. Finally, I'll consider 2 special cases, case for perfect complements and case for perfect substitutes, and we will analyze the substitution effect and income effect for these 2 types of commodities. Okay, so give heading substitution and income effects for perfect complements. Substitution and income effects for perfect complements. Please add, if 2 goods are perfect complements in consumption, if 2 goods are perfect complements in consumption, they are always consumed in a fixed proportion. Okay. The indifference curves will be of L-shaped. Indifference curves will be of L-shaped. If the quantity of Y remains constant and that of X goes up, if the quantity of Y remains constant and that of X goes up, the utility level does not change. So if we move horizontally, the utility remains same. Similarly, if we move up vertically, the quantity of X remains fixed and that of Y goes up. The quantity of X remains fixed and that of Y goes up. then also utility level remains the same. Then also the utility level remains the same. Now you look at the diagram. So I am considering two IC, IC1 and IC2. Okay. So these are the two L-shaped curves, and consumption will take place along this line. Okay, I'm calling this ICC because it will connect two different consumption points. Actually, here this is ICC since I have drawn it from the origin, and if I draw from this point, we will get the same PCC. Okay, so now what I have done, I have considered a budget line AB, and E1 is the point of contact. Consumption is taken place along this point of the budget line and this point of the kink point of the indifference curve. So E1 is one of the points of contact, and then I consider a reduction in price of X. So I'm getting this green budget line flatter than the blue one, AB, and consumption will be taken place following this ray. So the consumption will be taken place at E2. E2 is the point of contact. Okay. Now what I can do, I can draw to separate out the substitution effect from income effect. What I can draw a straight line, budget line HH prime, which is parallel to AB prime. So that if consumer wants, can consume along the same indifference curve. However, here the curve is not a smooth one. So, HH prime again meets the indifference curve at E1. In general, it will touch, if the IC is convex, negatively sloped, it will touch IC at different point. Here, it will pass through the same point E1. Okay, so are you getting any difference between this case and the usual case regarding the substitution effect and income effect? What will be the amount of substitution effect here?
0, because
0. Others? Any other idea about the substitution effect? Others, please. Are you feeling the substitution effect will be equal to 0?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So there is no substitution effect. So when there will be a change in relative price of X1, the total effect is equivalent to income effect. Okay, as price is falling, M by P1, that is increasing, and for that matter, consumption of the commodities will increase. However, because of change in price only, that is, if I cut down the increase in income, then there will be no change in the consumption pattern. If I consider HH prime, that is, if we cut down the additional money I have getting because of fall in P1 in my hand, what we are getting that there is no scope to move to any higher indifference curve, or indifference curve wise we will be not able to move to a different point. So there will be no substitution effect at all. when there will be a change in relative price of the commodity, the total effect will be equivalent to that of the income effect of relative price change. So please add. In case of perfect complements, the substitution effect of a change in price of one good. In case of perfect complements, the substitution effect of a change in the price of one good is 0. And so the price effect is equal to the income effect. So the price effect is equal to the income effect. In figure 1, consider this to be figure 1. In figure 1, AB is the original budget line. The highest attainable indifference curve, IC1, is reached at E1. The highest attainable indifference curve, IC1, is reached at E1. As the price of X goes down, the budget line rotates to AB prime. The budget line rotates to AB prime. The income compensated budget line HH prime, is parallel to AB prime and meets the indifference curve IC1 at E1 and meets the indifference curve IC1 at E1. So the substitution effect is 0. When the compensating change in income is withdrawn, the budget line moves parallelly from HH prime to AB prime. The budget line moves parallelly from HH prime to AB prime. the equilibrium moves from E1 to E2 along the income consumption curve. The equilibrium point moves from E1 to E2 along the income consumption curve. Demand for X increases. Demand for X increases. And this is fully due to the income effect of relative price change. This is fully due to the income effect of relative price change. Any question? Everybody got it?
Yes, ma'am.
It's fine to everybody? More yes? No?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next, perfect substitutes. Perfect substitutes. Now, if look at figure 2, consider these as figure 2. First, you draw the budget line AB, and then you draw the budget line AB prime. I'm considering a case when MRS XY is greater than the budget line everywhere along the budget line. In case of perfect substitutes, ICs will be the straight line, negatively sloped straight lines. I could draw the straight lines which are flatter than the budget line. In that case, P1 by P2 is everywhere greater than MRS XY. Here I have considered the case where MRS XY is greater than PX by PY everywhere. Okay, so budget lines are steeper, budget lines are flatter than that of the ICs. So IC1, IC2 are the negatively sloped straight line in difference curves. So if it happens, MRS XY, that is MUX by MUY, is always greater than that of the P1 by P2, the value I am getting consuming X will be always greater than the price I am paying for X. And for that matter, the corner solution will be taken place at B. So B is the equilibrium point to begin with. Corner solution, B. If I consider the reverse case, that is MRS XY is always less, in that case, consumer will consume here. In this case, consumer will consume only X at equilibrium. So when the blue and the red line are merging with each other at B, that is the initial equilibrium purchase. Now there is a rotation of the budget line because of reduction in price of X, and it is meeting IC2 at this corner. So this is the final equilibrium. Now to separate out the total movement, that is the total effect of relative price change, BB prime, between substitution and income effect, I consider a hypothetical budget line HB which is parallel to AB prime. Okay, and we are finding with HB there will be no change in consumption. Consumption will be taken place at the initial point B. So what does it mean? Substitution effect in terms of substitution effect.
It
Ma'am,
is
the
0.
entire price effect is here, the substitution effect only.
Entire effect is substitution effect only.
Ma'am, it is 0 because there is no change in consumption of it.
It is 0 because I'm not getting, when I am cutting off the money and drawing this budget line HB, we are getting consumer is consuming at the same initial point of consumption B, like the earlier case. When I am cutting down the money and trying to find out whether there is any change because of just change in price, I am getting nothing. Here too, I am getting consumer is with the initial equilibrium B. There no change in equilibrium position because of change in price only. Okay, the slopes of AB and HB are different. That means they are indicating different relative prices. HB is indicating lesser price compared to AB. However, with the lesser price, we are not getting any change in consumption point. So substitution effect is absolutely equal to 0. Okay, so the movement from B to B prime measures the income effect of relative price change. So here too, the total effect is equivalent to income effect, or income effect is equivalent to the total effect of relative price change. One told me the entire effect is because of the substitution effect. Are you understanding the mistake you did?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Any other question? Anyone, any other question? Everybody is getting the thing? Yes or no? Should I explain it once again? Anyone? So please add, when two goods are perfect substitutes to each other, when two goods are perfect substitutes to each other, only one of them is purchased by the consumer. Only one of them is purchased by the consumer at any given price ratio. Only one of them is purchased by the consumer at any given price ratio. The good that will be purchased, the good that will be purchased is determined by comparing the marginal utility ratio, comparing the marginal utility ratio to the price ratio. Comparing the marginal utility ratio to the price ratio. If mu x by mu y greater than px by py, if mu x by mu y greater than px by py, only x is purchased. Only x is purchased. Conversely, if mu x by mu y less than px by py, Conversely, if MUX by MUY less than PX by PY, only Y is purchased. Once X is purchased, a further fall in the price of X. Once X is purchased, a further fall in price of X will lead to an increase in consumption of X. Once X is purchased, a further fall in price of X will lead to an increase in consumption of X. But the whole increase in consumption of X is due to the income effect. But the whole increase in consumption of X is due to the income effect, since in the absence of any consumption of Y, there is no substitution effect. What you will substitute? Because you are consuming only X. There is no substitution effect. Figure 2 shows the consumer's equilibrium with perfect substitutes. The indifference curves are negatively sloped straight lines. The indifference curves are negatively sloped straight lines as given by IC1 and IC2. As given by IC1 and IC2. Let AB be the original budget line within which IC1 is the highest, attainable indifference curve at B. IC1 is the highest attainable indifference curve at B. Thus, OB of X is purchased. As the price of X goes down, the budget line rotates to AB prime. The income compensated budget line is HB. The income compensated budget line is HB, which is parallel to AB prime, and meets the IC1 and meets IC1 at B. Meets IC1 at B. Thus, the substitution effect is zero. Thus, the substitution effect is zero. When the compensated change in income is withdrawn, when the compensated change in income is withdrawn, the budget line shifts parallelly from HB to AB prime, and then the equilibrium point shifts from when the compensated change in income is withdrawn, the budget line shifts parallelly from HB to AB prime, and then the equilibrium point shifts from B to B prime. As long as the budget line is flatter than indifference curves, as long as the budget line is flatter than the ICs, the income consumption curve coincides with the income consumption curve coincides with the horizontal axis. Coincides with the horizontal axis. ICC. Actually, along the ICC, it moves from B to B prime. When the budget line is steeper than ICs, when the budget line is steeper than the ICs, here I didn't cover that part. Budget line is steeper than the ICs, only Y is consumed. Only Y is consumed. And then the ICC coincides with the vertical axis. When the budget line is steeper than the ICs, only Y is consumed and the ICC coincides with the vertical axis. Okay, so this is all about the perfect complements, perfect substitutes, how to measure substitution effect and income effect for these kind of commodities. So this part is complete. Now you have to check everything properly and do all the cases for increase in price, etc. Okay. In this case also you can extend the model considering, Px by Py is greater than that of Ux by Uy. That case, that is the ICs will be flatter than that of the budget line. So that equilibrium takes place at A rather than B. So that case also you can do. You may try. Okay, so this is all for today. Any question, anyone?
Ma'am, can you suggest any references for this part?